Hey everybody, it's Chris and I'm here tonight to do a pour with you. Thought I might do a little anniversary pour tonight. So a year ago, January 21st, I first started to pour paint and discovered how much I really loved it. And over the last year, I think I've perfected it pretty well, although there's always new things to learn, and I find that the paint does different things depending on what paint I use. Seems like I always discover a new effect that a certain brand of paint has. So I thought I would start by showing you the pour that I did on my very first painting a year ago. And I have to say that I think I've improved quite a bit. But this was a negative space pour, and I used some metallic paint. I don't know if you can see that, but I obviously stretched quite a bit because I got colors all the way out into here. And then I carefully put it away, and my cat Bella decided to walk on it. So if you look down here, you can see Bella left her little tracks across the bottom of it. So that's when I decided that it wasn't a good idea to put things into the closet, because they actually can get the closet doors open. And that's how Bella got in and ruined that painting. So I was a little bit sad at the time, but now looking back on it, I was like, it wasn't all that great anyway. So at the time I thought it was pretty cool. But I think, as with all crafts or arts that you try, you find that your first ones probably are not the best, that you definitely improve as time goes along. So I hope that's the case for me anyway. I think it is. So tonight I'm going to do a negative space pour. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to use a light gray paint. This is just a gray paint from Artist Loft that I have added some white flow acrylic paint from Michael's to. And I've added some water to it. I kind of feel like I probably need to add a little bit more now that I'm starting this. So I've got three 9 by, let's see, these are 9 by 12 canvases. And I thought I would do kind of a triptych with it, so that when they're all together, it would be a 9 by, or excuse me, it'll be a 27 by 12 inch piece when it's finished. And I thought this would probably make it a little bit easier to ship if I had 3 smaller pieces, because it's very hard to find big boxes to ship things and get them there in really good condition. So I've got my paint ready to go here, and so I'm just going to go ahead and flood my canvases with the gray paint so that I have a nice base coat to start before I put my color down. And I just want to try and make sure that I've got my paint flowing over the sides. Sometimes I prep the edges with paint to make sure that they're going to cover okay, but since this paint is a lighter gray, I'm hoping that it'll be okay and it'll cover all right. So I'm just going to quickly coat these, and then I'm going to put you guys on pause so you don't have to watch me do this, and then I'll be back and do the pour. Hang on just a second. Okay, so I've got all of my canvases covered, and I think we're ready to start putting some colored paint on here for the negative. I've got the negative space ready to go. I try to make sure that I do have enough paint on here so that it will still move once I get the color applied to it. So if I've got a little space here where I can kind of see the canvas through, I'm just using my little palette knife here and adding a little bit of extra to make sure that I've got a nice surface to start with. And I generally have to come back and kind of touch up a little bit when I'm done. And I do want to push these guys together so that it's one, kind of like one canvas. And I have these sitting up on, these are just some wooden stakes for signs for your yard, and found that those worked pretty well. So I've got all 3 of them on those wooden sticks, and so that it's elevated off of my surface. And so I'm just going to push these guys together, because my goal is to have one continuous stripe of color to go all the way across. So I've got my little PVC tube here. I'm just going to start that, I think we'll start it right about here. And I've got it just on the edge of my canvas, set it down into my paint. My colors tonight are crimson, black, and metallic silver, and then I'll probably put just a little bit of white in there to make sure that I get nice reaction from the paint. The crimson, I did add 2 drops of treadmill belt lubricant to it, so I am using a little bit of silicone tonight, and I'm just going to kind of mix that up a bit. I find that the red doesn't necessarily react a lot for me, and I want to make sure that I get some really neat cell action here. So I'm just going to start by I mean, basically it's kind of like a dirty cup. You're just going to pour your paint into the tube, and then once we get enough paint in there, I'll start moving it across the canvas. So we'll just start with the red, and then I'm just going to add in some black to it, and then we'll do some silver. I wanted to try to keep the white away from the red because I don't necessarily want pink, although we will get some pink in it just because that's kind of the nature with pouring, that if you use, you know, red with white, generally you're probably going to get some pink in there. But I'm going to try to keep those colors away from each other so that hopefully we get just like a darker gray instead of the pink. So I'm just going to kind of cover that red up. Hopefully you can see all that down here in my little cup. And then I'll just continue to add some paint in here. I want to make sure that I have enough paint, and there I am adding the red right on top of the white. I want to make sure that I have enough paint in this so that I can get all the way across the canvas. And if I have a little bit extra, I can always drain it off on the side so that but I just want to make sure that I have enough to cover everything so that I have some really good color and some really interesting stuff going on, hopefully. So I'm just going to continue to add in the silver and the black and the white and red until I believe I have enough in here. I think we're getting pretty darn close. So I'm just going to finish up with one more little bit of red on top of here. And then I can always add more. That's kind of the beauty of an open cup versus a flip cup, because once you do a flip cup, when you're out of paint, you're out of paint. So I don't know if you guys are able to see this, but my paint's kind of seeping out a little bit, which is okay. And I'm just going to come back here a little bit and lift it up just a tiny bit and let it spill over the edge. And then I'm just going to kind of walk this across the canvas. And I want to be careful not to scrape the canvas if I can help it. But as I go, I'm just lifting up my paint, and I'm kind of trying to turn my PVC as well so that I'm not getting the same colors everywhere. I don't want the same colors coming out of the paint. And I did scrape just a little bit. And if you find that you scrape, and I kind of went over that edge real quick because I don't want to lose all my paint down the crack there. And I can see that I'm probably going to run out of paint because I think I got a little bit too generous on that first canvas. And then I'm just going to skip over here so that I don't lose my paint again. And we're looking pretty good. And I kind of like to go in a line up across. And I actually think we might be all right. I think we made it. So this is looking pretty good. So I've got some cells coming out. And I'm pretty happy with how that looks. We'll just let a little bit more of this drip out just so that it can kind of flow back onto this canvas. You can see that I did come off of the canvas a little, or scrape the canvas a little bit here, but that's all right. We're going to fix that. So I'm just going to go ahead and let this kind of drip off. And then I'm going to put a little bit of paint right here on my plastic where you guys can't see, but I'm just going to kind of dip this PVC into it so that I can kind of grab some of this paint and maybe scrape it back across. Not scrape, but just kind of drag it a little bit. And I'm just picking up my gray to make sure that I've got something to kind of tap that paint with. And that's looking a little bit better. I do like that I have some cells there, so I think we're just going to kind of leave that be. I've got quite a bit of paint up here, but that's okay. And I did get some drips, but that's all right because when I start moving these, it'll be just fine. So I'm going to start down here with this one and see if I can kind of fill in that little bit where I scraped a bit. And I'm just going to kind of move it down and back up and see if I can fill that little bit in. There we go. And you can see that my gray paint is puddling a little bit, which is fine. And then I want to stretch this back down just a tiny bit. And then what I want to do is kind of go off to the right and kind of let that run over the side for sure. And then I'm going to go back up to the top and then kind of get that weight of that paint to go over. I kind of want to dump it off on this left side just a little bit more to stretch out my color a bit more than what I have right now. So I'm just going to kind of let the weight of that paint go up there to the top. And then I'm just going to let it spill over on the left. Hopefully you guys can see that, but I apologize if you can't. Hopefully you'll be able to see the next one a little bit better. And that's looking pretty cool. So I'm just going to kind of even that out a little bit so that I don't have a big puddle of paint at the top with the gray. And then I want to stretch this one out a bit. So hopefully my lines will match up pretty well once it's finished. So just kind of stretching this guy out, and you can see the gray kind of pooling up a little bit, which is okay. I'm just going to let that flow off of the bottom a little bit, and then we'll stretch it back up again. And I don't have a ton of gray paint on there. I didn't want to leave so much that I have a bunch that I have to try to get rid of off the canvas. I kind of want to lay this down and see how we're doing. I think I can stretch this out just a tiny bit more. And then maybe tip it off to the left a little bit more. And see if we can get rid of some of those lines on the edge. And then we're going to go back a tiny bit and straighten that back out. So I find that I do kind of a lot of wiggling and forcing it a bit. So that looks pretty good. And then we'll see if we can't get this guy stretched out a bit. So this one I kind of want to bring it down. And you can see that I've got quite a bit of paint on that right side. So it's definitely going to come down for me. And then I'm going to try and dump some of that off because I don't want all that paint on there. And then we'll just bring it back over. I'll get you back in frame here so you can see it. So I'm just going to come back over to the left and see if I can't get that stretched out a bit and get my color kind of a little further up the canvas and down. So we'll go up first, and that kind of took care of the little dots that I had there, which is good. And then we're just going to let it drop back down because I've got some lines here that you might be able to see in the gray. So I'm just going to drop that down a little bit and see if I can get rid of some of that. I want to kind of see where I'm at. So we're just going to drop that down. And then I think we'll move it back over because the right side is getting stretched out pretty good. So I don't want it to stretch that far. And I want to see where we're at. That's looking pretty good. I mean, you can tell that it's all one piece. My colors are kind of going through the piece. I've got some really nice cells. I think it definitely helped to add a little bit of treadmill silicone to the red. And then the white, of course, gives it some unique activity as well. I do think I want to get rid of this black spot here. So I'm just going to use my palette knife and kind of scoop up some of this a little bit. And otherwise, I think it looks pretty darn good. Might just come back in and add a little bit more gray paint down here where my canvas is showing through, and a little bit here. And then I'm going to get rid of this little black spot here. And it's kind of hard sometimes when you do a negative space. Inevitably, I always end up getting color into my negative space color, but it's okay. You can fix anything. A palette knife is your best friend, trust me. If you don't have one of these yet, you definitely need to get one. It's nice to help cover the canvas. It's also nice to help pick things up off the canvas once you're finished. Thank you so much for watching today. I think I can definitely see an improvement from where I started a year ago to today. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks so much.